Welcome to the Umbra Vortex, where whispers begin and screams never end. Beyond this point, only madness awaits. This isn't a place for comfort, only for truth. Not the kind found in books or muttered in confession, but a raw, unfiltered reality, cloaked in shadow, stitched with dread, and pulsing just beneath the skin of sanity. I'm Edward J. Hallow, and I'll be the last voice you hear before the silence consumes you. Tonight, you'll hear a tale of loss and the dark price that comes with it. A story where a young boy is drawn into a world of strange visions and forgotten horrors. A house, a secret, and the sinister presence of those long past. This is the story of lost hearts, where the past never truly lets go, and some spirits are never at rest. In the waning warmth of September, in the year 1811, a quiet, solemn carriage brought a boy of 11 years to the gates of Aswarby Hall, a grand but melancholy estate deep in the flat, wooded reaches of Lincolnshire. The boy's name was Stephen Elliott. He was recently orphaned, and, as is often the case with such unfortunate children, had no say in where he was sent. His new guardian, a distant cousin named Mr. Abney, had written to offer the boy a home. The invitation came unexpectedly, for Mr. Abney was known locally as a reclusive scholar, deeply engaged in the study of ancient religions, occult philosophy, and alchemical rites. Few in the parish had seen him in years. The estate was large and bleak, ringed by ancient yews and trimmed hedges that seemed too precisely manicured, as if keeping something in or out. The housekeeper, Mrs. Bunch, a plump and kindly woman, greeted Stephen with maternal warmth. The butler, Mr. Parks, was silent and stiff. Mr. Abney, when he appeared, proved a tall, gaunt man with parchment-pale skin and long, bony hands like dried branches. His eyes glittered behind spectacles, and his thin lips trembled with excitement when Stephen told him his 12th birthday was still many months away. "You arrive at a most opportune time," Mr. Abney murmured, with a tight smile that never touched his eyes. "Much may be learned in a year. Much may be prepared." Stephen was shown to his room in the older wing of the house, a place where the floorboards creaked constantly, and a curious chill seemed to linger no matter how many fires were lit. The boy, though brave, found himself increasingly unsettled. Shadows in Aswarby Hall stretched too far and lingered too long. Some mirrors returned reflections that seemed slower to move than the body before them. And often at night, the boy woke with the strange impression that something had just been watching him, and only barely slipped away. Still, Mrs. Bunch did her best to make him feel at home. They walked the grounds together, and she spoke freely about the house's past. When Stephen asked whether other children had lived there, she hesitated, then reluctantly admitted there had been 2. The first was a little girl with no family. Mr. Abney brought her back one day after a walk, saying she had nowhere to go. "She was a sweet thing," Mrs. Bunch said softly. "Quiet, polite, never caused any trouble. But after 3 weeks, she vanished before dawn. Gone without a trace. Not a shoe, not a ribbon. Mr. Abney claimed gypsies had taken her, and even had the ponds dredged in apparent distress. But I always felt," Mrs. Bunch added, "that she never left the grounds." The second was a foreign boy, Italian Mrs. Bunch thought, who had wandered the countryside with his hurdy-gurdy. Mr. Abney offered him shelter one bitter winter night 7 years ago. He stayed just over a month before disappearing without a word. "Left his little music box behind," she said. "Never touched his supper. Not a soul saw him go." That night, Stephen dreamt vividly. He found himself standing before a long disused bathroom at the end of a dark corridor. Through the frosted glass of the door, he could just make out a figure lying stiffly in the ancient claw-footed tub. It was child-sized, wrapped in a thin white shroud. Its face was waxy, hollow-eyed, and held a terrible smile. Its arms were crossed over its chest in a grotesque parody of rest. Then the figure began to stir. Its head turned toward Stephen with a soft creak. The lips moved. A low moan rattled through the door. The arms lifted slowly, reaching outward. Stephen awoke with a cry, drenched in sweat, and found himself standing barefoot in the hallway, staring at the very door from his dream. When he opened it, the bath lay empty, but the cold that rolled out was the kind that had never known fire. Mrs. Bunch hung a curtain over the bathroom door the next day. Spring came reluctantly. As the vernal equinox drew near, Mr. Abney's inquiries became more peculiar. He warned Stephen repeatedly to keep his windows tightly shut and to guard against the night. He asked after Stephen's dreams, his pulse, the condition of his heart. The ancients, he said one evening over tea, held this season sacred, a moment of balance and transformation, especially for the young. After one especially restless night, Mrs. Bunch found Stephen's nightshirt torn, 3 long, parallel slits scored across the chest. He had no memory of how it happened, only that he felt an oppressive presence while he slept. There were similar marks, fingernail scratches, on the outside of his bedroom door, too high for any animal. Mrs. Bunch's hands trembled when she examined them. "Say nothing to Mr. Abney," she whispered, "and lock your door each night." That same week, Parks descended into the wine cellar and came back pale and shaken. "Noises," he said, in the far vault, whispering, breathing, not rats, unless rats speak Latin. When he realized Stephen was listening, he clamped his mouth shut. On the night of March 24th, Mr. Abney called Stephen into his study after lunch and asked him to return at 11. He had something of profound importance to show him, something to do with the boy's future. "Tell no one," he added. At 10 o'clock, Stephen sat at his window. A full moon lit the silent grounds. Faint, eerie cries rose from the direction of the pond, thin, inhuman wails that drifted closer, then faded. Then he saw them. 2 figures stood at the edge of the stone terrace, a boy and a girl. The girl smiled softly, her lips parted in a ghastly mimicry of peace. Her hands were clasped over her chest, where her heart would be. The boy was thinner, with hollow cheeks, and as he lifted his arms, Stephen saw nails like knives and a great rent in his side. The pair stared up at him, not with malice but with purpose, and from them came a sound not of this world, one that pierced straight into Stephen's mind, a cry of agony, of vengeance long delayed. Then they vanished. At 11, Stephen descended the stairs. The house was silent as the grave. He approached Mr. Abney's study, where he heard the man's voice, droning softly, an incantation. Then a strangled cry, a gasp, and silence. Stephen flung open the door. Later, at the inquest, the coroner declared it the work of a wild animal. Mr. Abney had been found collapsed in his chair, a gaping wound torn into his chest, exposing the heart, which had not been cut but seemingly clawed open. A silver knife lay on the desk, clean. There was no sign of forced entry. His expression was fixed in a contorted mask of rage and terror. Years later, a grown Stephen studied the notebooks his cousin left behind, notes inked with diagrams, rituals, and rambling theories. Therein, he learned the true reason for his presence at Aswarby Hall. According to Mr. Abney's translations of ancient rites, one could attain supernatural gifts: flight, invisibility, protection from death. by consuming the hearts of 3 human beings under the age of 21. The hearts were to be extracted while the victims still lived, reduced to ash, and mingled with sacramental wine. The first heart had been taken from the girl on March 24, 1792, the second from the Italian boy on March 23, 1805. Both bodies had been hidden, the girl in the disused bathroom, the boy walled up near the wine cellar. Mr. Abney had marked Stephen for the third and final offering. His notes referred to the spirits of the previous children as the psychic portions, which he believed would fade in time. He did not expect them to interfere. He believed he was immune. He was wrong. To this day, if one visits Aswarby Hall in the weeks around the spring equinox, some claim to hear faint music, like a hurdy-gurdy far away. And in the mirrors, under certain moonlight, 3 shadows may be seen: a tall man in scholar's robes, a smiling girl, and a boy with reaching hands. 3 shapes, 1 judgment. The past reached out and found what it was owed. The living forgot, but the dead remembered. In the end, the house gave up its secrets, and silence was broken by the voices buried within. This was Lost Hearts, a reminder that grief can linger, and some debts are paid not in coin but in blood. I'm Edward J. Hallow, and if you're still listening, mind the shadows behind you. Some hearts are never truly lost.